Hi everyone, I'm Allie with the Potomac Bead Company, and I'm going to show you today a fast way to do odd count peyote using 2 needles and 1 piece of thread. This is going to save a lot of time if you look at our other video doing odd count peyote and how you're kind of doing a triangle to loop your thread back through. This is going to save some of that time for you using 2 needles and thread. For this project, I've done it just to show with the design that it's going to, the reason that you would use odd count peyote is if you want to get to a point in your design and you want to have a middle line. Other than that, it's going to be easier just to do regular peyote. For this video, I'm going to be making another sample of a little tree here, showing the star at the top as my center point. I'm using 2 needles, and I'm using size 10 English beading needles, as well as some .006 wildfire beading thread. The beads that I have are Delica beads. Whenever I do peyote and with a pattern, it looks the nicest if you're using Delicas, since they're the most consistent, and they'll fill in your space the nicest as you're working with your strip. I have white here, red, green, and yellow. It's Opaque Yellow AB, a silver lined green, a maroon red, and then the pearl white. So to get started at the top here, I'm going to be starting at the top, doing a couple rows just of the white, and then showing you how to add your middle row. Again, this is very patternistic, so if you have a pattern or you have something that does have that odd count peyote, this is just good reference rather than actually building something, how to do that. So to start out, I have a piece of thread, and I've put a needle on each end of this same thread. I'm going to start out by doing basically a row of peyote by putting 1 seed bead on each needle, dropping that down to the middle of my thread at the bottom, so there's 2 hanging out. The 3rd bead I'm going to pick up is going to go through both needles. So I have my 3rd bead going through and dropping through 1 needle, and then another needle, and they're running through in the same direction. For my 3rd step, what I'm going to do is do, again, a bead on each needle, letting that drop down next to my group. So then you'll have a group of 5 beads here. And you just kind of want to make sure that they're sitting right in a nice peyote form. So I've got my 5 beads on. My 6th bead that's going to go on is going to be the same as the 3rd. And I'm going through the same bead with the needle going in the same direction, through one and then through the other. Pull nice and tight to make sure I still have my form going. You can see it's starting to look like a peyote row. And I'm going to continue going with a bead on the right needle, a bead on the left needle, and then sharing the needles. And that's going to be the start of my peyote with this 2 thread peyote. So I have another grouping on. And I'm going to do 1 more that I go together. And then I'm going to do 1 more grouping where I put 1 on each needle. And then I'll show you how we're going to save some time then at the turn. So again, kind of just make sure those beads are in place, push them down. And then I'm going to do 1 more step where I do a bead on each. After I get my bead on each needle, I'm going to take my thread that's at the bottom, so we'll call this one here my bottom thread. It really doesn't matter which one, if you're at the top or at the bottom, but I'm going to go to the bottom thread here, taking my needle that's coming out of the bottom, and I'm going to go through the last top bead of that row. What you're going to have then and see is you're going to have a thread coming out towards the outside of your peyote and a thread coming in towards the inside of your peyote. To work more rows now, what I'm going to do is continue with a row of peyote both up and back just with my 1 needle. So I'm going to take my row of peyote here. If you don't know basic peyote, you definitely want to watch one of our other videos first before watching this 2-drop. And I'm just doing basic peyote. We're putting a bead on, and I'm going through the bead sticking up. So I'm going to put my beads on. When I get to the end of my row here, all I'm going to do is come back just with basic peyote again. So a bead goes on and I'm coming back. So I've gone up my row, I'm coming back my row with that same needle. When I get to the end of my row, I'm going to put on my 4th bead here. Let that drop in place. I'm going to let this thread that I've been using just hang out. I'm going to pick up the opposite thread and I'm going to sew back through that bead towards my project. So I've switched threads. And that's getting the start of my peyote. And that's going to be a nice, easy way to do that odd count. So again, now I'm working with my other needle and I'm going to go up and come back as well. When I get to the middle point here, the middle, I'm going to add a yellow bead to be the center star of my tree and come back then. I'm going to come back again with, you just want to give a little tug. I'm going to come back down the row again, and it's not till my threads are pretty much at the same place that I'm going to switch up. And I'm coming back the whole way with my white beads. Again, when I get to the end here, my bead goes on. I'm going to put down the needle that I've been working with, pick up the other needle, and come back through the bead towards the project. Give a nice tight pull to get my bead in place. And then it's done. So that's going to be the top of my tree if you're looking at it this way. When I come back then, I'm coming back with the opposite needle. So basically every 2 rows you're switching needles. I'm going to pick up a green bead here to be the top of my Christmas tree. Continuing with the white beads on the side. And you can do this for any pattern that you want to make. Coming back with the white. And I'm going to start building my tree, so I'm using some green to make a green triangle. You can make this wider, you can make it shorter. You can also create different patterns. I'm at the end of my row, so I'm going to put my bead on. And then come back here and pull nice and tight. And then I'm going to get ready to continue my rows. So continuing on again with my tree, I'm going to start with my white, and I'm starting with that other needle now. Then I've come back, going to add a green, and then another white. And showing, just coming back. Add a green in. Another green in place. And the nice thing is with odd count peyote, if you're not doing a super wide strip, if you're doing something simple like this, like a tree, you can build it as you're going and see what you're doing. If you are doing a really big, wide project, you might want to do it on graph paper or check out some of the free conversion charts that are online. And what I'm going to do then, I'm at the end of my row. My thread's coming down, picking up the other thread, going back the opposite direction towards my project. And then I'm going to create my tree again. So I'm coming in here and I'm using a tree, green one. And at any time I can pick up my red, and I'm going to add those just as berries. So there's no rhyme or reason to where I'm picking them up. If you are very particular, you can make one and then look at another one. So there's the start of my Christmas tree. I'm going to come back down the line again with my white beads. And with a green bead then to fill in. Another green bead after that. And a white bead. Again, I'm at the end of my row. So on is going to go my thread in the opposite direction. Give a nice little tight pull. And I'm ready to keep going with my tree. Actually, I'll put a red on here, make a little berry on the end of my tree or an ornament. Pick up some more green beads and put them in place. And again, I'm going to come back down in the same fashion. And I'm going to start to make the side of my tree here. So I'm going to use green on the sides as well. So I'm going to put the white away for a little bit and just hang out. I think I'll use another red one as a berry or a ornament, whatever you want to call it. Beads go on with that one piece of thread. Now I'm switching needles, going back towards my project, giving a nice tight pull so I make sure that last bead's in place. I'm going to continue with my peyote, building my Christmas tree. And it's the same step over and over, but I'll keep going just so those of you that do want to make a little tree can follow. I'm putting greens in this place here. And when I come back, I'm also going to use greens, and maybe I'll throw a red in here and there. I'll throw a red on this end. Then I'm going to come back with my peyote. And this does save a big step when you're thinking of going and doing an odd count peyote. It's beneficial to do this 2-needle version, so you're not having to pull it around in a triangular fashion. And I'm continuing then to build my little Christmas tree. So you can see it a lot better on the white. That's why I switched from the white to the gray. You can see that tree taking step. I'm going to do a couple more rows with probably just my green beads. Maybe I'll pick up a red here and there. You can use brown beads for the tree trunk. You can not even be making trees. You can do something else. It works really well for patterns that include diamonds or anything that would have a point. And as you sew and get to the end, you're going to pick up the other thread and needle, go back through that bead in the opposite direction towards the middle. Nice tight pull, and I'm going to do one more row of my tree. And then I'll do the stem and just finish it off. So I could do this pattern over and over on a bracelet. You can make it wider, you can make it a little bit more narrow if you want. And that's going to get you that tree formation. So I'm going to finish my row here with green, and then I'll show you how I'm going to build the little base of my little base and stem of my tree. So I finished my green row, and now I'm going to start picking up some of my white beads again. And I'm going to do the white beads on the side. And then just because it's here, I'll use my red as my tree trunk. And using my white beads again to show that I'm done with the bottom of my tree. I'm going to come back with my white beads then. Come right back down the line with the white. And for this pattern, I didn't do anything. I just sat down as I was practicing this 2-thread and just did that little tree. Just thought since it's the holiday season, I'll do a tree look to it. And come back down the line with my white beads. When I get to the end of the line, again, the deal is that I'm going to put my bead in place and take my other thread and needle to come back in the opposite direction. I'm going to use my white beads again to fill in some space. On goes a red for that tree trunk to look like the little stem of the tree. And I'm going to finish out with some white beads. And I'll do about 2 more rows here of my white beads. If you wanted to make these into earrings, or you want to make, if you do want to make the trees, and you want to make them into something simple, what you can do is you can take up some of the space with 15-0. So if you want them to be even here at the end, you can use 15-0 beads to make them flush. If you are finishing it off, that you're just doing a just simple piece of peyote like this, what you can do is once you get back to the starting point here, you can just tie off your threads right at the end. Like I said, I'm going to do 2 more rows of my white beads, just so that way it looks like the same at the top and the bottom of my tree. On goes a bead, and I'm going to go through. And whenever you're doing odd count, whatever number of beads you go in one direction, so I'm putting on 3 beads when I go away from the other needle. When I come back towards the needle, I'm putting on 4 beads for that peyote row. I have 1 more bead to go on here, and I'm going to show you, I'm just going to tie it off. So once I get to the end of my little tree row here, all I'm going to do is take my needles off the end, grab those 2 pieces of thread here, and I'm going to make a little knot to knot those pieces together. Normally, if you were doing a whole bracelet like this for this flat design, you would add a clasp. You'd have to go back and add thread to the start. Since you've started bringing both threads towards, you're not going to have an end thread. And I'm going to tie that off, and then I would have just the end of my little tree project there. So I've made 2 different trees. One's a little bit bigger, one's a little bit shorter and longer. And you can see that you can change up the pattern, but it's going to be a great way to create that center line so that way it's even on your pattern. So thanks a lot for watching. Those of you that have done peyote and odd count peyote, hopefully you like this method a little bit better. It'll save you some time, especially if you're doing a very long project. Another just word of advice, if you do have something that is very much a counting project or a stitch like this, you may even want to invest in a loom and try that. One of the Rick's beading looms would be great for you to create this same pattern without having to use the multiple needle method. If you have any questions, feel free to comment. We'd love to answer anything that you may have. Also, you can check out the rest of our YouTube videos. We have a bunch of holiday videos going up, so you can check those out for some gift ideas. And check us out on Facebook, Potomac Bead Company, and also online, potomacbeads.com. Check out the locations page, and we'd love to see you in one of our physical locations. You can also gather materials if you can't get into one of our shops at thebeadco.com. Thanks a lot for watching, and happy holidays.